Well, then I'm going to hit the button and record, so there's no shock to any of our viewers and or attendees.
What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really shaking things up today. I also have my gain turned up, so hopefully my volume isn't like in the fucking shitter, but we'll see.
I appreciate you and your transparency efforts, Tim.
You know what? I am nothing if not accommodating. I see a need, I fill a need, and Toast needed a little transparency today.
So you're saying you are nothing?
Wow.
He wounds. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
It's the Isolation Squadcast number 9, where we have taken the lazy route, and we're going to decide to continue on with our world building exercise of the tabletop RPG. What was it called?
The Ground Itself.
The Ground itself. I am hijacking this intro. My name is Tim. Pronouns are he, him. And Toast, would you like to go second, please?
Thanks, gang. I'm usually your toasted host with the most, but it's been a week, so I'm glad Tim has stepped in and stolen the responsibility from me.
Usurped.
You have been usurped.
He has usurped the podcast. No. Pronouns he, him. Let's frickin' do this, man.
Do it.
Let's do it.
How about Roman?
And,
no, Muffin.
Oh no, Muffin.
Fuck you,
I'm
Roman.
I'm the least important guy in today's
Quality
episode.
down the fucking tube.
Absolutely.
you know what?
Yeah,
We're
right
just
where it
getting
belongs.
comfortable with it. So once it gets comfortable, all bets are off. I am not a muffin, and I realize I've never said my pronouns before on here, and there's a reason for that. It's because I don't care what you call me. I mean, technically my pronouns are he, him. I don't care. Okay. Call me what you want. I'm easy.
Okay, we'll call you Muffin.
Perfect. Which is very gender neutral. Well, I guess that depends on the language you're in.
Depends.
In English, it's gender neutral.
I was going to say an off-color joke,
as are
but
all
I'm going to
things.
leave it. I'm going to leave it. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Roman.
Oh, did I introduce myself? Oh,
No,
I'm
you
Roman.
Yeah.
He, him. And I'm the guy who...
quality is going down the tube. Shit.
I'm just the guy who's along for the ride today.
You changed the formula up too much. Nobody knows what to do
Absolutely.
anymore.
Cats and dogs living together.
Yeah.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. All right. Okay,
All right.
Muffin,
Well,
lead on.
Thanks for kicking this off, Tim. So just to remind everybody sort of what we were doing last time, if you happened to watch the conversation last time, we are playing a game called The Ground Itself. This was introduced to me through the Friends at the Table podcast. Austin Walker et al. Were using it to build the world for their current game, Sangfiel. And I just thought it was a super cool way of trying to build a world in a collaborative storytelling kind of fashion. So I thought this would be a great way for us to do things with the Forgotten Realms, with what happened at the end of Ben's campaign. So what we did last time then was we dealt out cards. Everybody, depending on the card that was dealt, people would take turns telling, some information about this world. So as a recap of what happened at the end of Ben's game, in case you do not recall this from that last one, the players basically blew up the world, in more or less, and by the world I really should just say the far north, the giant sphere of annihilation just sort of disintegrated everything up there, including part of a mountain range. I mean, just chaos.
It's bad news
and
bears.
Bad things happened.
If you want the details, you'll have to go listen to last week's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most tragic thing of all is that the hero known as Wendell got sucked into it, which is just
true.
No one will ever recover from that. He was beloved by all.
It was heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell, what happened then is when the Sphere of Annihilation went off, it basically turned that area into one big super volcano. The Underdark was flooded with magma. All of the Underdark creatures have to be thrust out to the surface. There's ash in the air. And some of what we sort of dealt with last time was the idea that because the adventurers were following Cord, who we've decided also is an aspect of Tempest, who is the god of battle in the Forgotten Realms, analogous to Cord in Greyhawk. As a result of that, the world knows this, and now Cord is sort of reviled. Everybody hates Cord, except people who are super into destroying the world, so there are cults out there that are like, yay, Cord! destroy the world.
Chord's actually cool and based.
Yeah. We decided that there are some races that are handling this a little better than others. The ones that are naturally sort of accustomed to living underground and were not living in the underdark vicinity of where this all went off and have to be, expelled from their homes. We also decided that there is kind of a battle of the gods happening as a result of this. With all of this upheaval, the gods are starting to draw battle lines with one another. And, the gods of cold and the underdark are kind of getting on one side, and the gods of light and life and the surface and beauty, and they're kind of getting onto the other side. And we also decided the place is called the Betrayer's Maw, which I thought was a very cool way to describe it.
Oh, thank y'all.
The Drow have taken over Luskan and Neverwinter. They've actually renamed Neverwinter into Everwinter because that's what they're shooting for.
Because they're very funny.
Yeah.
Very clever people.
And basically everything down toward Baldur's Gate is just now kind of constantly being inundated by ash that's falling from the sky, and it's earned the place the name the Ashlands. And that is where we'll kick up for today. So what we're going to be doing this time is the next phase of the game. And I will share my screen to make this happen. And you go there. There we go. So we're going to have a deck of cards, and we are going to draw said cards. I'm also going to get a dice roller up and running here because we're going to need it in just a little bit. But for now, we're good. So what we are going to do is we are going to take turns. I figure we can start with Roman, Tim, Toast, me. We'll go in that order.
Okay.
Unless anyone has an objection. And what we're going to do is if you look on the PDF that I shared with you on page 16, you will see a list of cards and what you do when one of those cards is drawn. And so we're not going to keep track of suits. We're going to keep track of the number of times that card is drawn. So the first time someone draws an ace, their question is, what are the plants like in our place? The rocks, the soil, so on and so forth. The second time an ace is drawn, that person will answer the second question, so on and so forth. So I will be keeping tabs of which cards are drawn to make this easy for ourselves. The difference between last time and this time is, first off, if you draw a card and you don't like the question on that card, up on page 15, there's a section called Focused Situations. If you don't like the card that you have drawn, you can instead decline to answer that question and instead do one of the 6 actions that you see on here. For those of you who cannot see it, those 6 actions are to first either tell a story, where you can say, I'm going to create a storytelling character in the game. I'm going to describe them. I'm going to describe what they're doing. Other people can sort of interact with it a little bit as listeners. They may interrupt, things like this, but there's one person telling the story. Second thing is to throw a ball. We're going to have a party of some kind. It can be a festival. It can be an actual party. The end of the world is upon us. Yay, let's have a party about it. Next is to discover something. So discovering something is you get to there's a chance to name a fact that enters the world whole cloth. This is just now true for whatever in the game. 4 is to see an omen. So this can hint towards something that's going to be happening in the future. Maybe now there's a comet flying overhead and that comet has, ominous portent or something to it. 5 is to leave the frame. Now remember, we're telling a story not about the people. We're telling a story about the place. So we have locked ourselves in that we're basically in the northwestern corner of the Forgotten Realms, but the whole planet of Toril is kind of affected by this, but we're not thinking about what's happening in the world of Toril. I have made reference to also battles between the gods, which can happen on other planes. We're not looking at them. We may never leave the northwest corner of the Forgotten Realms unless you draw the card, you pass that card, and instead use the leave the frame option. In that case, for just a moment, the window widens, it moves somewhere else, and you can see more of the world and you can tell more about what's happening elsewhere. So if you wanted to tell a story about something that's happening with the gods explicitly, like outside of the Forgotten Realms, their aspects out in the ethereal plane or whatever, you can do that by leaving the frame. And then the last option is just to move on. I don't like any of my options here. I'm just going to pass.
Fair enough.
Okay.
And other things happen on a 10 that we'll get to when somebody draws a 10. So, is Toast still with us?
Is he... Oh. Might have to take a pause here.
Yep, hit the pause button.
Hit the pause button.
Ooh. Gives me a second to read a little bit more on the 10s.
Yeah. Oh.
I see him like pop in like as though he's trying to speak, but we're not hearing anything and his camera's off. So.
Sorry, guys.
Welcome
Okay.
back.
Coming back.
You all right there, buddy?
Yeah. Just needed to be an adult for a minute and step away. But I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. Welcome back.
Okay.
So we're back. Short pause. That's great. So yeah, that will be the turn. So on each of our turns, and again, we'll start with Roman. We will, since I'm the one sharing the screen, I will draw the card on Roman's behalf. This deck will contain jacks, queens, and kings. And if we draw one, we'll just draw another card.
Okay.
Cool.
Until we get a number. Yeah.
I will also, just for the people at home, I'm gonna link this rule set in the body below, because I don't want to keep shifting back and forth on my screen. I want to keep it kind of front and center, because we are actually kind of playing now then, right? Or is this still world building?
This is play.
Okay.
Well, it's play, but the game is world building.
Right.
Like we're not playing characters. We are building this world.
Yeah.
We're just moving on to the next phase of
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So now instead of
yourself, Roman, I want to play a character, and their name is God.
Wow.
Edgy.
Of course, Toast thinks of himself as God. Why am I not surprised?
Well, I mean,
Wow.
he is our main. He is the main personality, and we're all just facets of him. So in a way,
I
he's
was
right.
playing a character, Muffin. Way to make it sound like it's my ego or something.
Toast just claimed God as a fictional character. How dare he?
Oh no.
Oh no, the Christian right is going to
to.
cancel us.
Oh no.
No, the Christian right don't cancel anything. That's leftist culture.
Oh, never.
The Christian right
yes.
never cancel anything.
Right.
Oh, never, ever.
Cool.
No.
These people don't speak for me.
Yeah. No,
No, we're
Christian
not.
right
We're not
just
saying
bans
the good
things.
Christians. We're saying the Christian right.
We're specifically talking about a specific group here.
Not the Christians in the right. The Christians on
And
the
if
right.
and if other Christians listening feel targeted by that, then maybe consider why that is. Because we're not talking about you, and you think,
Anyway,
if you
we got
think
it.
we are.
This is
Okay.
going places.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is going
okay,
places.
all right.
Let's
Why don't you deal us a
pivot.
card there, Muffin? Deal us a card. I'm rolling up my
We're summoning
sleeves.
some.
I'm rolling up
some,
my sleeves. Let's
some
go.
HT right now. All right, here we go. First card is going to be the Ace of. Well, doesn't matter. It
doesn't matter.
First. Ace.
Okay, well, what are the plants in our place of rocks? Hey, guess what? That's a boring question, so I'm going to go with one of the other options. So, let me see. All right, I may just tell a story. But let me just give. This is going to take a bit of minute because I have to formulate it. So it's a big ask. Well, no, but I mean, I have to bring up a character and tell a story, and that's not just something that's easy to pull off at the top of your head. But, oh really? Oh my! Aren't we feeling confident today?
Like I said, he picked God for a reason.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, tell you what. I will tell a story, and I will expand on what I talked about last week. Remember how I mentioned how there are some pockets of resistance, not resistance necessarily, but kind of enclaves that are trying to maintain a semblance of safety and security in a chaotic world, except that they're being like essentially persecuted because this has now become a crap sack world where there's only places for opportunists and banditry and zealotry and all kinds of nastiness. So I will tell a story. Remind me, are there the races of Faerun, they don't have the animal races, right? The Leonids and the other animal-like
really,
races.
no.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
there's Goblin. It's your standard sort of high fantasy setting, so Goblin.
Right, but not the actual like animal-human hybrids that we've seen in latter day
like,
D&D.
They do.
I mean,
like Faerun's got like Aarakocras,
yeah, I was about to say
That's true.
Aarakocra are a thing.
Dragonborn.
Dragonborn, yeah.
Dovahkiin.
Okay, tell you what, let's go with Dragonborn. So I'll make my character a Dragonborn. Now, in the past, in the days previous to the apparition of the Maw, this Dragonborn, let's give him a name. Let us call him. I'll use I'll use a variation of my character's name from Final Fantasy. So we'll call him Kartan. So we'll call him Kartan. We'll make him a. Should be. I'm thinking I want to make him an evil-natured Dragonborn. So let's call him. We do red. No, I'm feeling blue. I'm feeling blue. Blue Dragonborn. Blues tend more to the north, right?
Mm-hmm.
Blue dragons, right? As I recall.
Sure.
So
well, no, blue dragons are actually of the desert.
Oh, is that right? Okay. So what's north? White?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll make him a white then. So he'll be a white dragonborn. And in the days prior to the Maw, he was a sycophantic adherent to of Tiamat. He was a disciple of Tiamat, a priest of Tiamat. And prior to the Maw, of course, he did what priests of Tiamat do, which is, of course, zealously enforce her will, subjugate other races, etc., etc. Not a nice dude. He's done a lot of pretty nasty stuff in the name of his goddess. But and remind me again, what's the status of Tiamat as of this moment? She's MIA, right?
No, she's about.
Is she about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
there's a whole module about it actually for 5e, the Horde of the Dragon Queen and all of that.
No, so
right, but what happens in that?
She's in prison.
No, so she's trapped in the nine hells.
That's what I thought.
So
yeah.
Apparently.
So she's not about. She's not there. She had been.
Our world, we can decide.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose, but that's a good question though. So, but let's decide then. So, is she trapped in the nine hells? Because if so, that helps with my story because
sure.
what I'm building towards is that he is he's an apostate. He was a loyal servant of Tiamat, except for years now he's failed to hear her call, likely as a result of the events in those other modules. And after the apparition of the Maw, which essentially turned the world upside down, Hord's a bad guy now. One of his enemies is now considered evil, and nothing makes sense anymore. And he started to question his entire faith and reason for being, to the point now where he is essentially he's broken. He's broken down. He's seen suffering at a scale never before seen, which had made him reflect on the suffering that he's caused in his past. And he's suddenly now in the face of this disaster and looking at the surge of drow coming in and meting out their own form of violence and abhorrent acts and all of this. This is a man who was a creature, man, whatever you want to call him, who once was a devout follower of evil, who is now finding himself questioning his own morality and his way of life. And let's set it in a town. Is it which one is like not totally taken over by drow yet? Is it Luskan?
Luskan is totally taken at this point.
Right. So the other one to the south.
That would be Everwinter now.
Everwinter? Okay.
Is also, it's taken over by drow, but there is a solid resistance movement.
Okay,
there.
so let's set it in Everwinter. So he's found his way in escaping the disaster of the Maw and dodging the drow and no longer hearing the voice of Tiamat. He has now finally abandoned his faith. He has removed from himself her holy symbols. He is now what was it when a paladin is no longer a paladin? What do you call them? Not failed.
Anti-paladin.
No, not an anti-paladin.
Not a
like when they
Lolladin.
lose their power.
I don't know. I feel like that's an apostate, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, but there's an actual in-game term for it. When that happens.
okay. I don't know that.
Okay, well, he's one of those. Yeah. So he's a former paladin. He's lost his connection to his deity. He no longer has magical powers. He still has his martial training, so he's essentially just a warrior now. But he has now found himself in Luskan and is now trying to turn over a new leaf and is trying to now support the resistance movement in Luskan. Of course, because of his history, it's his attempts. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, in Everwinter, and because of his history, his attempts are fraught with difficulty and prejudice. Most of it justified, but he's finding an opportunity to really show his mettle and his value in supporting the disaffected there and in mounting a resistance against the Drow and hopefully one day rebuilding Everwinter with the help of the fair-minded people who still remain there. And so that's not really much of a story. It was more of a background, but I think that sets a nice character there that we can use as a focus. And
I think that's a good character. I think that's a good story. And at the end of that story, what has happened is we now have a resistance leader for the city of Everwinter.
A wannabe resistance leader. I mean, let's see how that goes.
No, see how it plays out.
Not the leader, but like a leader, someone who is
a motivated individual who wants to do better. Yeah.
People
so how's that?
Cautiously.
Yeah, big time. So there you go. That's my contribution. How's that?
Oh shit, these weren't shuffled.
Doesn't matter. I skipped the ace anyways.
We're still gonna count it. I'm gonna shuffle them. So now
that last 20 minutes, scratch it.
Let's start it over.
It's like this is an amateur. Like I've never used this tool before.
All right. I've talked enough. Someone else.
Great. Tim.
It's my turn. Yeah.
No, fuck that. We're not gonna have that be the same.
We're not doing a
draw.
10.
Fuck that noise. That's a king. 6.
All right.
Yeah, we're skipping jacks, queens, and kings.
Okay,
no
face cards.
No role in this part of the story.
Okay, what is the most horrible thing in or about our place? This is interesting. Like I feel like looking at a map of Faerun, like a lot of this area looked like it was actually pretty pleasant, like a nice place to live and potentially work and and stuff like that. So less so like everything's dark and it's cold and that all kind of sucks, but it's the turmoil that has been churned up. Like when you go from a time of relative stability to a time of instability, like that sort of chaos, I think is like probably one of the scariest things that a society can experience. So we are talking about, these races that really haven't had to interact all that much on a level playing field. The Underdark residents and stuff pouring up to the top, taking over towns and cities that were originally held by other groups. That type of that type of conflict is going to be extra bloody and extra acrimonious for like the foreseeable future. This is going to fuel any sort of like racist or like any sort of like ingrown hatred of these groups that they had before is going to build that resentment to like a fever pitch. There is going to be a remarkable like drawing in of people looking for like people of their own kind, a lot of like fracturing of society into like really small insular groups of people that they can trust. And I think that's probably like one of the worst things that's going to happen here is you lose a ton of that cooperation. You lose a ton of that, cross cross-group trade, volunteerism, any sort of help in between communities, like traveling merchants and stuff like that. People who would maybe need help on the road are not going to find it, and that's just going to force more hardship on the people who are still surviving south of the Maw. So I think that's kind of like the worst part about like what's happening currently in this snapshot in time, this frame. So
I like that. So basically, we're seeing lines kind of being drawn between the races of this fantasy world, where once things were more cosmopolitan. They were used to living in a place where there's plenty for everyone. There's space, there's food,
and there's understanding between
religious
religious groups. There's there's understanding between merchant guilds. There's understanding between races too. Like that's kind of a larger one, and all of that is going to break down along familial and and like family and close friend lines, right? It's just going to carve up into really small little trusted fiefdoms. I don't know. It's going to be
refugees trying to get into the dwarven cities, say, please take us in. And they're like,
not in your fucking life. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Cool.
Okay. Cool. Great. All right. Toast. Your card is a 5. It's the first 5 of the game.
Oh, cool. What are the stars like in our place? The sky, the weather. So are we still going
remember, you can interpret these broadly if you want to.
Yeah. But are we still dealing with it fairly closely to the event itself?
We can say fairly closely, as in a couple of years since it's happened. So it's not like this immediate, like it has just happened and people are like, what the fuck? Enough time has passed that everybody knows. If they don't know exactly what happened, they know something really bad happened somewhere.
And maybe this is the new normal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so first off, to answer the question literally, like, stars are the same. The stars are still the stars. This wasn't a galactic situation in any means.
The gods are involved, so...
Yeah, but are they going to be hurling stars at each other?
Like a big snowball fight.
I mean, that could be a thing that you want to do. I mean, this is your question. You can decide.
All the cosmos shows up and starts dueling with the stars. Yeah,
you can be like, you could say, you know what, the gods are fighting with one another. One of them literally decides one day, I'm going to start plucking stars out of the sky and chucking them at the other side. That is a completely viable thing. It's your card. You get to decide.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that even though we're talking about the world of Faerun, it still follows too many of the realistic principles of cosmology for me to want to dive into it that way. Sorry, folks.
Just wait until you give me an opportunity to answer a question like that. Shit's gonna go fucking bonkers.
Oh yeah, no, fucking EO decides to pick up 2 suns from 80 billion light years away and whip them at Tiamat from across the universe.
Classic.
No, sorry, I'm not going that way.
That's fine. You don't have to. I'm just saying you're welcome to interpret this as broadly as you would like to.
I mean, I think if nothing else, I think what's more important with this situation would be like what we talked about in terms of the aftermath being blocking out the sky and making things like the stars hard to see for a while, and how people would interpret that potentially as their gods abandoning them, or feeling like, practically they lose the ability to track anymore, to keep good senses of time passing, of seasons, of years. So, I mean, the sky is still the sky for the first little bit. Obviously, like there's going to be tons of dust. It's going to be very dark, very hard to see. We talked a lot about what's going to happen with global warming and whatnot, but I also expect they'd see a ton of storms. The weather would be incredibly unpredictable. Again, there's always certain consistency which can be guessed at weather patterns by people. That's why, you end up with farmers' almanacs and whatnot. That shit all goes out the window after something like this happens, and you get a massive ecological shift. So yeah, I don't know. It still seems to just follow the pattern of kind of chaos, of darkness, or not physical, but like spiritual darkness.
I like that, spiritual darkness.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Nice.
I like that. So basically the stars have been kind of blotted out. People can only very rarely see the stars and the moon anymore.
Yep.
I imagine in some places they'll just never see it. The further north you go, the closer you get to the maw, the more stuff is in the air, and the less you'll see them, and the more abandoned you begin to feel.
Sure.
I like that. And then, of course, the storms from the ash clouds. I think that's a great addition to it, because that actually does happen. One of the things you see from like massive volcanic eruptions is, lightning within the ash clouds and stuff like this. So that's,
and it's cool as shit. I've seen amazing.
It is really cool to watch when you see good videos of it.
Yep.
All right, sweet. So my card then
you're up.
is going to be skip the queen. We
the
already
ace.
had the ace.
Of spades.
But this
We
is
already had
technically
the ace, so this is
Now, since
technically
I
the second.
Yeah, I was going to ask, since this is technically the second ace, I skipped it when it was mine. So do you do the first one or do you do the second one?
I would say, since you drew the ace of spades earlier, I would say we would skip this one and say that was already answered.
Yeah.
Personally.
No, but I mean, like,
but he skipped. He declined to
I didn't
answer
take
the
the
ace
first
of
ace.
spades.
Oh yes, then we still answer as if it was the second ace.
Okay,
that was my question.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But since we already drew the ace of spades earlier, this is really fortuitous.
Mine was
very
the
nice
ace
that
of
that
clubs.
happened early.
Yeah.
All
Wasn't
right.
mine the ace of clubs though? Anyways, that's right.
9. That was the ace of spades.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay.
So this is the first 9 that we've drawn. The first 9. What do people eat and drink here? What is considered traditional? So obviously, I think that we've already established that food is a problem, right? So the things that people once took for sort of granted as like poor people food, like so your various staples, wheats and grains and stuff like that,
Gruel.
muttons and gruels and stuff. Suddenly, these things are kind of in high demand because they're nutritious. They're cheap, they're robust, they store for a long time if you take things properly. Eating meat is going to be a real luxury, even more than it may have been before, depending on where you are. But so there's
depending on the kind of meat.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I was going. It's like, so really people are having to start changing their diets. So there's two things that kind of fit into this for me. What are people eating and drinking now? So first off, things that were staples are now luxury. The whatever groups are doing the most well off, they're the ones that have the most grain stores. And they're eating bread. Oh my God, you have bread. That's now a big thing. But so the luxury foods from before, practically non-existent. To say they are a luxury is, it's almost unheard of that you would eat, a good roast pig or whatever. The things that were common are now kind of luxury items and only held by the strongest people. They're kind of often used as bartering chips and things now. So what is the common thing now? What is considered traditional in this place? It's not so much traditional as like, what's the norm that we're moving into? So for me, I have two things for this. One is, we've already talked about xenophobia, and this between race kind of stuff. I'm gonna say cannibalism is starting to come up. Not cannibalism necessarily within your own race, but
totally acceptable to eat the meat of like one of the out groups.
That elf is starting to look mighty tasty. Right.
I hear no meat is very tender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a veal. The
dwarf,
veal of
you
people.
just stew it and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Dwarf is a little leathery, but if you stew it, it softens up nicely.
Yeah. So I don't think that this is super common at this point. I think this is a crisis scenario for everybody, but it's when those tensions become so high, we ultimately don't look at each other. We're not the same. We're not the same race. So yeah, I don't mind eating you. It keeps me and my kids alive. The other thing is we keep talking about this ash, and I like the idea that despite all this ash that's being kicked out of the ground, this is a fantasy world, and the gods do have some power. And I've alluded to the gods having this conflict going on. What are they doing? I like to imagine, and maybe this is because I've been thinking about like Dark Souls and stuff recently quite a bit, that there are just little pockets in the ash where the god of life has kind of taken those places and just put little like nodes of her power where there are these little pockets of hyper productive stuff where it's just constantly growing. You pluck an apple off the tree and the apple grows back in moments. These start to become the new sorts of locations for centers of power outside of the existing cities and stuff like this. Places where people can basically eat the ash, more or less, because these things, for whatever reason, are consuming the ash and turning it into things that people can use, but they're very, very rare. There we go.
Cool.
There's my answer.
Freaking
Write
sweet.
this down. So are we good with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Roman, you have
Back to
our
me?
first 3.
All right. I'll try not to be a weenie and skip this one. What do people listen to and perform here? Ooh, what is considered the folk art? I like this one. Okay. So I think for the intents of our exercise, I'm kind of veering now towards focusing on Everwinter as our central location. Because if I take it too broadly, if we do like all of Northern Faerun, that's a lot to cover. So I think I'm gonna use Everwinter as a node. And of course, you guys can feel free to apply it more broadly if you like as we go on. But I think it makes it easier for this to just try and stay focused. So what do people listen to and perform here? I'm going to say not a lot. The mood is extremely dour, except maybe for the drow. So I'm going to say the drow themselves, while they have been driven from their home, generally speaking, their morale is somewhat good because the overworld has now become a lot more hospitable to them, which it wasn't before, and they are finding opportunities in taking over that didn't exist before because of the chaos that now exists in Faerun overall. Generally, especially Loth's followers have been able to stay relatively organized and cohesive, whereas the races of Faerun are falling essentially apart. The societal structure essentially is under upheaval, but the drow have been able to adapt to this changing world relatively unscathed. They've of course suffered losses, especially in the first few days as their tunnels became, flooded with magma. But now they're in the overworld. They're actively engaged in a campaign of subjugation, and they like it.
And what they love to do.
Exactly. So they're having a good old time. So they're probably playing some music, I would say. Now, I'm not really familiar on what drow music sounds like, if I'm being an edgelord.
Imagine it's a Zatar.
Heavy metal Zatar is what I'm imagining, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm picturing right now.
Or a theremin. No, that would be
sure.
no,
that's a little... Yeah.
Kids would play the theremin.
So I have to imagine that their culture is the one that is now mainly taken over. And even among the oppressed, for lack of any other options and lack of their own inspiration, there's been some bleed through. There's probably been a whole bunch, I would say, in the resistance movements, a lot of protest songs, a lot of rallying songs, I would say, but sung like more as laments because they feel like they're in a losing battle. So it's a lamenting rally. I don't know if that's a proper description there.
No, I think that's
Like,
good.
yeah. So it's like a keep your spirits up in spite everything type of song.
Like a keep calm and carry on kind of a
kind of stuff. Yeah, stiff
the
up
best you can muster. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
now taking on a drow flair because
yes,
of the drow influence,
I
and
agree.
also the drow overseers, if they hear us playing our music, they whip us, they beat us, they sacrifice us to Lolth. So we have to only play their style of music, but we do it in our way.
They'll add a subversion or a subtext to the lyrics, so it sounds like a drow song, but there's something else going on. Like, think of a more subtle version of Bye Bye Miss American Pie or American Woman, or Keep on Rocking.
Literally what I was just thinking is like 60s protest songs from Vietnam.
Exactly.
But if they were played in Vietnam,
exactly.
I like that.
Cool. All right. So there you go. And but of course there are no big giant performances, especially not, well, let's say the Drow don't mind putting a show on. They probably have some bards of their own that are going around and, propagating propaganda in musical form and whatever other forms that the Drow would like to use to subjugate. But the resistance movements, of course, will have their own figures here and there that will travel from pocket of resistance to pocket of resistance and put on little underground performances to keep the spirits up whenever possible. So that's what I'm looking. That's what I'm seeing here.
So my ignorance coming through. The Drow themselves, where are they at, like technologically, and like would they be like more on like tribal, or were they like fairly similar to the top groups?
Fairly similar to surface. Dwelling races.
All right, so they wouldn't be like, I'm just trying to picture in my mind's eye, like.
But the Drow are very also, at least in the classical Forgotten Realms, they're divided into houses.
Okay.
So you can think of this like the dynasties in something like Game of Thrones or something like this, where you have the Targaryens versus the Baratheons, for example. It's very much like that, just all within Drow society.
And I'm picturing like a raiding society. So like Viking is kind of coming, so like House Carls and like that kind of like. I don't know, like I don't know. That's just coming up for me. But like
you're not far off. They would the Drow in the Forgotten Realms, history and setting and everything would often hold raids on other houses and other cities and take their slaves and take the slaves that they had. Those are our slaves now, and now hey, you're also our slaves too now.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
My general
and
understanding.
They are matriarchal also.
Yes,
the women run the show.
Cool.
That's right.
Good to know.
And my understanding has always been that the main thing is the Drow would be a real, like even before the Maw, the Drow were always seen as they could really be a serious threat to the overworld, but they're held back by their own evilness, essentially, their own infighting and their own fractured nature.
Interesting.
But if ever there were a motivating event that would get them to set aside those issues,
whatever that should be.
Yes, then perhaps that would be enough to cause them to really fulfill the threat that most people fear from them. And look at that, wouldn't you know?
Cool.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right, great answer. Tim?
Yep.
You have a 2.
First
two.
Name a monument, marker, statue, or other physicalized memory that exists in our place. What does it mark? Okay. I'm trying to think. So the Drow, when they would have come up from the surface, like where would they have come from? Like from caves, or like
they would have come pouring out of caves, hidden cellars that they'd put into cities and built. There's there will be natural places they'll come out, but they wouldn't be unexpected for them to also have like. We have a tunnel that we built to this city for the one day, we'll be in that. Oh shit! Now it's an escape hatch.
Right.
So all sorts of places. You can think of them just coming out of anywhere unexpected.
Okay.
And places that are expected.
Yeah, completely expectable and also unexpected. Okay. So yeah, I'm okay now. Like Vermintide is kind of like coming up in my mind, like these things coming out of. out of the literal ground, as it were. Okay. Monument, marker, or statue. Because they are fully in control of Luskin, and Everwinter they're in control of as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there are probably others as well. Those are just the main two.
Yeah. That we're focusing on,
and we've focused on those.
Relative size between Luskin and Neverwinter, are they both fairly large cities, or?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not as big as Waterdeep, for example. That's like kind of like the biggest city in the Forgotten Realms. I believe it's the biggest city anyway.
Yeah.
But they are up there.
Right. I think what you would probably see is one in each of these main cities that they've captured, because like this is the first time that they've been able to capture and hold a large settlement on the upper areas. They would probably be erecting like statue or some sort of like memorializing. I'm picturing like a stone cairn or something that's a little bit haphazard, probably rushed up, but in like a fairly large town square in the center. And what these are called for them are just called deliverances. So this is just like a celebration, or like a collecting area for them to like celebrate their deliverance from the Underdark, and this blessing that's been bestowed upon them to make the overworld part of their home and part of their dominion. So I would say that you'd probably be able to find one of these in any of the major town centers, possibly just built up from the rubble of former statuary, or like other bits of like temples and churches and whatever. Like they're just building up their own monuments out of the rubble of the other ones and just calling them deliverances. That's what I'm going to call those.
Like that. So they're basically just knocking down the things that exist for this society already, and saying we're going to repurpose this.
Yeah.
Because not like this is to celebrate our stuff, but we're doing this in such a way that we're just like how we took over your city. Mm-hmm. Your monuments will become our monuments.
Yeah, it's like a subsumed sort of a thing. So yeah.
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's cool.
Cool.
That's cool. So I'm imagining like.
So meeting at the deliverance would be like kind of how they would phrase that, like the town deliverance.
Meeting at the deliverance. I like that. Yeah. So I can imagine things like statues of Cord or Tempest Tempest, or just any of the other gods suddenly given a very drow sort of perspective on their cheekbone structures and stuff, and their holy symbols look corrupted now in their hands.
That's kind of what I'm picturing.
Your god is us now, and that's cool. Yeah. That's real cool. I like that.
Nice.
Good answer.
Thanks.
Host.
Ooh.
We got.
Yeah, we're skipping the queen. The 4. That is our first 4.
What is the primary building or natural material of our place? Well, again, I think we said it a ton last time. I think the main thing that's going to really become abundance in and around the city of Everwinter now is going to be like obsidian, or any kind of other lava, rock, or glass,
and ash and all that. Yeah,
that too. I'm sure it could be mixed with water to make it really sticky,
like a mortar or something. Yeah.
So just black, shiny black bricks with this disgusting gray mortar in between. Hey, buddy.
The idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest star for the evening.
The guest star.
Hi. Yeah. Say
hello,
hi, buddy.
Parker.
Can I smooch? No. Thank
There
you.
you go.
I love you. I love you.
I'm imagining these buildings being erected there, Toast, like out of those like I don't think you'd like make bricks out of obsidian, but like even just like the idea of like a gloss black with like a matte gray mortar, like how.
Yeah, because you wouldn't end up forming them into bricks. Like you have to like
It's like
when you
chunks,
cut
but
them,
yeah.
they'll split. They'll create very shiny, glossy faces, but the shapes will be super irregular. So yeah, you'd end up with these like mottled, gray lines surrounding these shiny black stone walls. The reflection off of that would be nuts, though.
Yeah, that would actually be really cool.
I have to imagine, though, I mean, the Drow have wizards. I mean, they probably have elementalists who can shape obsidian as well. So you could probably take obsidian and use magic to shape it into different shapes that you want. I have to assume that's possible.
It's probably possible, but like maybe not like a common building material. Like maybe something that like their higher ups would be able to employ to get like really like regular brick work and make something truly epic.
It's a decent rare material before the event.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
That's perfect. I really like the color juxtaposition in my mind there of like the black obsidian making things up, and then it's separated by lines of this medium to dark gray ash-based mortar, making this sort of like the inverse of what you see on most houses where the bricks are a little bit lighter. At least down here I see it often. The bricks are very light and the mortar tends to be a little bit darker to offset them and make them pop a little more. Sort of the exact opposite of that. I think that's really cool.
It's a good visual.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. So for me, it'll be another 3. That's our second 3 that we've gotten. What do people in our place argue about for fun? Whether at the bar, in the square,
fun anymore,
or in other social spaces.
Who tastes best?
It's the best way to prepare your orc meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, this is really. That's a really hard question for me to answer because we feel like we've set such a stage where like people don't argue for fun in this world. Like
there's still got to be levity somewhere though, right? Like people are gonna argue.
Muffin, can I float an idea for you?
Yes, absolutely, please.
If the cultures have descended into cannibalism, would a point of argument be whether or not they eat the brains?
Is it kind of like a yay or nay cilantro sort of discussion? Like some people are just all fucking about, they're all about the brain, and some people are just like, no, that's a line I won't cross.
Like prions, fact or fiction?
They're elf vittles. We're talking about the elf vittles. Do you eat the vittles or do you just eat the sweetmeats?
Yeah.
You know what? I like this answer. Let's go with it. People like to argue about the best way to eat another race. Recipes.
Yeah, recipe arguments.
Things like this.
For fun. For fun.
Yeah.
This is for fun. And what are the aphrodisiac components of an elf eyeball?
I assume that people would know.
Eyeballs are good for the balls. It's just in the name.
And
are the elf eyeballs round, or are they almond shaped like they appear to be?
There's another good point of elf. I mean, elf eyes are obviously going to be round. No, they're not. They're going to be almond shaped. Look at them eyeballs. Oh God, this is terrible.
They just answer that argument by cracking open an elf skull.
Host now proves that he is the master of disturbing imagery.
Hey, y'all breached the subject.
It's true.
It's true, Muffin. You opened the door on this one.
We're just going along.
You started cannibalism. Now
I was
the
totally
monkey's paw has
prepared to
curled.
punt on this one and say I'm going to use this as an opportunity to use one of those actions instead. But I like the idea of there being like in whatever bar exists, there's a group of dwarves all hanging there. Everybody knows that the best way to eat an elf is raw these days. It's just
every
sushi.
Wednesday they have Martha Stewart show up and do a 2-hour cooking class on how to best prepare different parts of your dwarf or something.
And I would imagine that there's so like I said, like I don't imagine people argue for fun very much in this world anymore. Like arguments can always run the risk of going really, really bad because people are just always in a state of high tension. So I also imagine there'll be instances where somebody's having these kinds of conversations, and then there happens to be a cannibal in the room who cleans other. Well, actually, the best way to eat this is by and this, and then you add this little bit of seasoning and just put a little bit of volcanic ash on top of it. It really gives it a bitterness that goes really nicely with the
Have y'all ever
sweetness of
tried
the
a dry
elf flank.
brine?
Yeah. Like there's
You leave it in the root
God.
cellar for 2 days, packed in salt. They just
Now, some people will tell you need to get your bodies fresh, but really, if you take them on the second day and you prepare them properly, you can't taste the difference.
Yeah, I mean,
Some wizards have that spell that preserves food. You know the one I'm talking about? I used to be told that didn't work. That didn't work on sentient species. Turns out totally false. It works fine.
You know how every town has the meat smoking room or whatnot. You could totally just put people in there too.
This is the gnome smoking room.
There you go.
Oh
Horrible.
God. Okay, let's
Horrible.
move on
Love it.
from this, shall we? Back to Roman. Roman, yours is 4. It's our second 4 that we've drawn.
We got the bar opens their doors to all. What is the bar and who's a regular there? Yikes. Or the church. Or the church changes a core mandate. That's more like it. What is the church and what about their worldview has shifted? Oh boy, which church? I like the church one better. But now we can go with the obvious and go with Cord here, which we've already touched on. So, I mean,
Churches.
yeah.
You didn't really have churches before.
Tempest / Cord?
But Cord didn't.
Well, I think we're going with Cord having been
An aspect of
Tempest, right?
Or
Because
Tempest
Cord
is
doesn't-
an aspect of Cord, either one.
Whichever. Well, it's because Cord doesn't technically exist in the Forgotten Realms. We kind of hybridized it.
Yeah, so Tempest would be an aspect of Cord then.
Fine. But okay, well then let's establish first of all, because we have a difference of opinion here. So Diz,
Just being pedantic.
No, but it's a fair point. It's a fair question. So what? Because I don't know much about Cord. My character was not an adherent of Cord. It was more Disco and Nolan who were. But what do we know about Cord / Tempest, like in this world?
God of battle, God of combat, conflict,
adventure.
General.
Yeah,
He's a pretty dude.
But like, how do his adherents in normal times typically worship him? Like, is it shrines, fighting? It's just on the field of battle,
honoring him in combat.
So like, just basically invoking his name in battle, and then they committing actions in his name. But there was no gathering place. There was no like organized religion around him. Is that my understanding?
I mean, there always is. I'm just not sure where that would be in the Forgotten Realms.
Like, did they proselytize? Did they evangelize? Like, how
I mean, they would follow army. Like, as an example, they would follow armies around, and mercenary groups might have a priest of Cord in their group to bless them before they go into battle.
So there was obviously some kind of hierarchy. If there's a priest of Cord, that priest had to have been educated somewhere. So if not, and it's like some kind of temple or seminary or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
it's just a book. There's just one book that everybody keeps passing around.
I mean,
just the one battered copy clustered on the corner.
Seriously.
Could be.
Fine. Well, then, in that case, that book, that singular book, has gone missing, presumed destroyed.
Ooh.
As of course the adherents to Cord / Tempest have been forced underground. They can no longer openly invoke him in battle. Anyone found invoking Cord either in the course of battle or war or otherwise is immediately pilloried by his mates, and as such there's been essentially a parallel underground between adherents of Cord who still believe that Cord is being essentially framed in all this, and those because so now there's like different. Here we go. Here's what I'll do. There are now 3 subgroups of what used to be the adherents of Cord. There are the traditionalists who believe that Cord was framed, was done wrong. They've been forced underground and are doing their best in supporting local resistance movements and providing aid and succor to those who still wish to adhere to the old version of Cord/Tempest. Then there are the apostates, those who have essentially abandoned Cord as a result of what's taken place, who
What
are
did you call
now
them?
apostates, or maybe that's not the right word. Disenfranchised. I don't know. Can you think of a better term for that?
I'll go with
They've
the
basically-
apostates. I like
Yeah,
that.
apostates. I think apostates makes sense. You know, they've
I
basically
mean, apostate doesn't
abandoned.
just have to mean somebody who's lost their faith. It's just somebody
Yeah.
who's abandoned that way.
Exactly, correct. Yeah, so there you go. And then there's the new Church of Cord. Let's call them the Church of the Betrayer.
The
Since it's
radicalists.
Yeah, well, this is the new church who are embracing this new vision of Cord as the destroyer, as the betrayer who is responsible for the Maw, and they love this shit. They are reveling. So this is basically a new aspect of Cord, who is essentially chaotic evil, if we're using alignments, and who is responsible for the Maw, and they're fanatics. They are zealous fanatics who have their own twisted version of the old teachings of Cord, but now applied in a more destructive way. So where Cord may have been once a god of valor in battle and adventurism and excitement, he is now a god of, or this version of him is now a god of chaos and destruction, the flames of war, the glory of conquest, the chaos of
I love this.
the chaos of
Can I add
descent.
something to this?
Yeah, please, yes.
Can each of the 3 groups have their own The Book of Cord?
I love it. Yes, I love it. And each of them claim it's the original. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh God.
So there you go. That's what I'm going with.
So we've got the Torah, we've got the Old Testament, and then we've got the Christian Bible. Let's do
There
this
you
thing.
go. There you go.
Beautiful. Great answer. Great answer, Roman.
Awesome.
I'm loving this. So basically, Cord now is a god with, in the eyes of the world, 3 potential aspects, and they are all sort of at odds with one another. I love this. Each group has their own holy book now, and they're all like like from their perspective, the other 2 are just blasphemies of the correct one, and so like they all kind of say the same things but in different ways.
Yeah. So, but my question for you guys now is, because I haven't really delved, I don't know enough about the cosmology of the Forgotten Realms to really go do a deep dive there. So when stuff like this happens, how does that actually affect the actual gods? Like, what do you guys say on that? Like, Cord.
Let's hold that question until we get a question that calls for that answer. Because I have an answer for that if I happen to draw that card.
Okay, well, let's hold that thought then.
Okay. All right, Tim.
Yeah.
6. That's our second 6.
Oh yeah, this is the second. This is my second 6. I will inform you.
Oh yeah.
Someone
this is the one I wish I had drawn. Somewhere.
No, this is not your second 6.
What is the most horrible thing about our place?
Yeah,
I thought-
was the first
had
one.
first 6.
What is the most
thought you were
horrible
the-
thing about our place? And I did the racism thing.
Oh, I thought you had the monuments one, but maybe
Well,
that was your.
You did have the monuments.
That's
one
also a thing that I did. So now, someone returns to our place changed. Who are they and how are they different? So like, would a person focus on like a singular figure here, or
It could be a singular individual. It could be a figure out of myth. It could be a god in the world that you're running here. It doesn't really matter.
right? It's like this one doesn't speak to me all that much. And I feel bad because that means that like I might be discarding it.
Can I throw you a suggestion?
Yeah, I'm open to that because like you and Muffin, I
Cord
think
comes back.
I have two suggestions. So I knew that's what Muffin was going to say, but I didn't want to steal his thunder. I do have another suggestion though. I like Muffin's too, but my suggestion was, what if a member of our party was somehow managed to survive?
ooh, like Cord brings back like maybe his most faithful adherent, which in this case would probably be Nolan's character.
I'm
But
thinking so.
What about consider that
Okay.
what's happening with the belief in Cord and all of that? Would it be that one who's brought back, or would it be Weimer who destroyed everything, and Cord is now starting to take
love
on this
that.
aspect of Cord?
Because that's your character, so you get to go ahead and do whatever you want and not feel bad about supplanting someone else's.
Well,
Weimer is the one who had the blade grafted to him.
yeah, but he.
I love this. This is great.
Okay, all right. So like, okay, we're definitely gonna run with this,
right,
for
do it.
sure. I'm wanting to like discuss this a little bit because, because Weimer wasn't a believer of Cord. Like there was no aspect of Cord that Weimer identified with or Cord had any dominion over Weimer. Weimer just happened to complete the weapon and destroy the world. Though, like what I'm thinking though is Nolan's character, oh my God, Alan the Barbarian, was the one who kind of set things in motion with the coin sacrifice on the dead child, right? So okay, so for those who are listening, Cole's notes, there was a kid who was attacked by not kobolds. He was attacked by shit. You guys weren't here for that part of it. I always get this wrong. A child who was attacked and was killed. And so anyway, he was put up upon a funeral pyre, and Alan, Nolan's character, tried to bless the child, as as he is wont to do, because the child died violently, like in battle or whatever. And this blessing kind of like caused some like cosmic horror thing to happen with the child, and the child rose out of the flames and like took off into the woods, like burning and scattering things. It was like an anti-Cord thing. So like I feel like Nolan's involvement with like the beginning of the cataclysm, if Cord were to return and bring back his like most faithful admiral as like an archangel, as part of his will, I think that would be Alan in my mind.
Okay. I think that's perfectly fine. It's a question of which of those, because I think they both fit. On one hand, it is fitting with Cord in his sort of original aspect. Maybe
Yep.
that still persists. Maybe these people are all worshiping something wrong, and Cord is like, no, y'all are all wrong. I haven't changed.
Right.
Or maybe Cord, if in that case, Alan would be a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
If Cord maybe has changed, maybe Weimer the Destroyer is the one you want to bring forward.
Right.
I think they're both good. I think there's cool options here for either one.
So if I can throw in a suggestion as well, I kind of like Weimer for this, Tim, mainly because it's your character.
Yeah, but we're
and
not
this is
playing
your-
these characters, right? These are just
No,
guys who are going
but
to
it's
show up
your
in the
creative
narrative, right?
exercise. Yeah, but you have a connection to Weimer, and you don't have a connection to Alan.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main. And the other thing is there is a story hook there in that perhaps Weimer feels responsible in his final moments about having lost his will to resist the spire. Despite his friends trying to stop him, and in the blinking moments before his annihilation,
He accepted Cord as his Lord and Savior into his heart.
Well, perhaps Cord reached out to him, seeing what's about to happen, right? Because Cord's a deity. He's like, no, fuck!
Yeah.
Oh shit, you, the guy who's about to destroy the world. Listen, all right?
Annihilation was Weimer's road to Damascus.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, why not? But it doesn't have to be a faith thing. Remember, gods are real in this world. It doesn't have to be a faith thing. It can be a power thing. It can be Cord coming to you like, dude, this is wrong. This should not have happened. I know you didn't mean to do this. We got to fix this.
You got to set this
all
right.
we got to set this
And-
right.
Okay.
So basically, Cord isn't asking for your faith; he's asking for your collaboration to essentially act as his envoy, and perhaps, and again, I don't want to speak for Weimer because he's your character, but I'm just throwing suggestions out here.
Because he is
That's true.
the arbiter of this
That's
particular
true.
card.
But I'm thinking that there are angles that you could try to do that work for Weimer. It doesn't have to be faith-based. It could be, survival-based. It can be maybe, like, remember how you resented your arm? Maybe you resent Cord for everything he's done, but the alternative was annihilation. And so, hey, maybe that's better than annihilate. Anyway, I'll shut up now because this is your thing.
Yeah.
But I
So-
think there's ways you can do this.
I hear you, I understand you, and I love it. However, I still like I still prefer Alan as the Archangel coming back as like the he was the true believer this entire time. He kind of fucked things up by starting this whole thing in motion, and now Cord's brought him back in order to rectify these misgivings or whatever. Like, if there is anyone who's going to proselytize in Cord's name and to try and restore his good name, he's going to have a lot of power, but almost like a dark power, like an ill-gotten power. There's going to be Alan would find resistance with these people, with the fanatics at least, right? So I prefer to lean more towards Alan coming back and just being a being that is coming back that I'm not going to control. Right. It's just I think he's the one who came back.
You could almost think of him then almost as like an avatar of Cord in some ways.
Yeah.
Like, my job here, I have been brought back because I believed I was the real believer, and I'm here to tell you, Cord is
and
still,
I was there at the
he is
at the
as he was.
Yeah,
because war never changes. He's still,
So my question for you now, Tim, is how has Alan changed? What is he now?
Let me just read that again.
How did he survive? What did Cord do to him? Or is he still Alan, or is he something else now?
Who are they and how are they different? No, you know what? I'm in a retcon. You're correct, because it does specify that someone returns to our place changed. And to bring back Alan is to galvanize him in his faith. He's not significantly changed. It is Weimer. Weimer's back, baby.
Let me delete everything that I just typed.
Yeah, I apologize. But reading that more specifically,
I'm going to say that being an Archangel is a pretty big change. But
I'm being yanked around here. I'm being led like a dog on the end of a chain.
I need to let Tim decide for himself. We have to shush.
Yeah.
Well, and like I don't think that I don't think that becoming an Archangel for the god that you were like super into, is
okay.
as much of a change. It's going to be I'm happy with taking the Weimer route in that particular case. And I still do think that this is like Weimer's attempt to atone for this. He obviously, it was a will fail. He did the thing out of like sheer want for it to be over. It was almost like a suicide thing. Was him destroying Faerun, unfortunately, and he's been brought back to rectify that. And he's a Warforged, so he's not going to die in like a human life scale. So that's nice. He might be here in many decades as the frame changes, right? So
yeah. So how has he changed then?
Well, he's been brought back to his original self. No more fucking fur. No more obsidian arm.
That's for sure.
Well,
if he's back, his head, has he been given some sort of, because I liked the idea of like the Archangel.
Yeah, no, and I do think I want to hone in on that. Like, he is like an avatar of this god, like as a I don't know, as a, like not as a retributive force, but as a restorative one. Like, he's here to bring about a proper understanding of the destruction or the apocalypse itself, to try and set the record straight. How has he changed? He's been restored back to what he originally was, largely, before all of the cosmic horror that was done to him over the course of our campaign. But he's also like been changed as far as his outlook and his faith and stuff goes, because like he was captured and raised by orc barbarians, was kind of his backstory. But now he's sort of seen the way of Cord. And I think it is sort of like a radical coming to God moment that before he destroyed everything. So
he is now he is a true believer, and in being returned as this idea of sort of like a messenger, and he's sort of like a restorative force.
Yeah.
I would sort of interpret that as like he's got some divinity behind him now. Like he may not be the Archangel Weimer, but he's
no longer a fighter. He would more likely be like more of a paladin sort of type character. Still martial, but also now with an aspect of Cord behind him.
And how does he express his divinity? By that I mean, like, again, forgive me, I don't know much about Cord. Is like, what's his plan essentially? Like, how does he choose to represent Cord, and how does he hope to work?
I don't know that this card necessarily covers that that aspect of him. Like, it's just he's back, and this is how he has changed. He was not religious, now he is, and he doesn't have the stupid fur anymore.
Got it.
I get to retcon that thing that I really didn't like.
Nice. What's in place of his arm? His arm is gone. What's there now? I
don't know. What do you guys think?
Does he back to his original form?
Yeah. So like either he's back in his original form, or he keeps the obsidian arm as like a trophy, but it is no longer speaking to him. Like it is a fully articulated, and completely normal,
like purified
part. Yeah,
I like
almost
that. Like the arm has now become his holy symbol in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I was thinking. But it's no longer like a kludgy thing that becomes the sword. Like it is just an arm, but it is purely obsidian, blacker than black.
All right.
Cool.
But it's articulatable, like it's an actual functioning arm.
It's just a hand.
Nice.
It's a hand, arm,
I like
everything, right? Like,
I love it. That's awesome, dude.
Cool.
Great
Hey,
answer.
Weimer's back! Hooray! That's gonna piss Ben off.
Toast. You're being awful quiet over there, buddy.
I'm ready. Well, just respecting. I mean, I wasn't part of the campaign, so I can't.
It doesn't matter anymore. You can inject whatever you want at this point.
I can't really contribute as much to that as you.
Well,
can.
to that specific one, I totally get it. It's like talking about Elden Ring. I don't know what to talk about, right? So
you're gonna talk about Elden Ring. I can talk about Elden Ring.
Man, you fool!
You said the curse words.
No.
We've drawn our first 8.
Sweet. Okay. So what does success look like in our place? What do the inhabitants want? Well, success looks like survival, if nothing else. Our inhabitants want to be able to live and eat and hopefully not be subjugated too terribly, or apparently end up as somebody's dinner. I think that's a distinct way of describing the way that the world kind of looks to be. I mean, obviously that's apart from any particular political imbalance or religious jockeying that's already been described a ton. But I think most of the regular inhabitants just want to, survive and feel safe and try and understand or come to grips with whatever the hell is going on.
Cool.
So I think, has anybody played the game This War of Mine?
Briefly.
No, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feel that I'm getting from this. Is like now we're sort of thinking. So there's lots of stories that are going to be kind of in this world that we're building right now, and I like the idea that there's this element of just humanity that is, despite all the cannibalism that's there, the black humor that might exist now, the battle lines being drawn between the gods, Drow taking everything over, that there's still just this big class of people that are like, I just want to keep my kids alive till tomorrow. That's all I care about.
That's the focus.
Great.
Yeah,
Great
just
answer.
realistic.
Good to ground us back into the humane when we've been delving into the fantastical and the divine. So, excellent.
The
Good
plight of the
answer.
common.
Yeah. All right. My card is, this will be our second ace at this point.
Correct.
It is time to plant the seedlings. What are the seedlings and where are they planted? What is the harvest that is hoped for? So the seedlings is in quotation marks. So I'm interpreting that as this question is meant to have a lot of latitude. It doesn't have to be about the plants.
That's how I would read
So
it. Too.
I'm going to say it's time to plant the seedlings. What are the seedlings? Where are they planted? What is the harvest that is hoped for? So we've got two characters that have been brought up in here. We have, of course, Weimer, who has returned. And we have Kartan, the Dragonborn, who is an apostate of Tiamat and now sort of, a powerless, failed, I've lost my faith paladin trying to, rally a resistance in Everwinter, for example. Or not for example, that's what he's doing. And then we have Weimer, who has suddenly returned. So I'm going to say, what are the seedlings? The seedling is the real resistance. So I said there has been the little pockets of fighting through. Luskan is completely controlled. Everwinter, there are still little pockets of resistance, but it's very, disjointed groups and all of this. I'm going to say for my answer to this that Weimer makes his way to the city of Everwinter, gets in unnoticed somehow. This is not his story, so I'm not telling his story. I'm trying to tell the story of the city and the area.
Yeah.
But Weimer gets in there, meets up with Kartan, and together they, Kartan's, I'm trying to make amends for a bad life. Weimer's like, I'm trying to make amends for this is all my fault, and I'm trying to restore Kord's good name and set the world right. They start working together and they start creating the true resistance.
Cool.
And I'm trying to think of what we could call that. Something that goes in opposition to the idea of the betrayer's maw, something that runs against that idea. I'm drawing a blank.
Are you looking for like a name for the resistance movement? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that is what I'm asking.
Okay.
If you want something in direct opposition, why don't you go with something like Hope's Hunger or something?
That fits with the maw thing. That's cool.
I can pick a name another time.
Hope's Hunger.
So I'll just basically call it
like
the resistance with a capital R right now. The resistance is the seedlings.
I was thinking along the same lines, but on like a single word, but instead of the resistance, on like the restorers, or I don't know if I like that.
So Weimer and Kartan are working to reunite the resistance forces in Everwinter, and what is hoped for is, a full effective resistance and expulsion of the Drow from this place that has kind of become like this is sort of our crowning achievement. And if we can push the Drow out of here, we will galvanize not just the resistance forces here, which is necessary to make that happen, but we'll galvanize resistance forces everywhere.
Right.
Okay, so it's a full galvanization not only of the forces in Everwinter, but across the realms as well. That's my answer.
Love it.
Cool.
Roman?
Sounds good. Yes.
There's no
the
Joker.
Joker. Oh, damn, that would have been
Our
awesome.
third ace.
Third ace. All right. The harvest day has arrived. What is being harvested for what purpose? Oh, no. Oh, no.
Our gnome crops have just come up. It's fucking day.
Oh my. Okay. You know what?
I don't even want to know where this is gonna go.
Okay. I'm gonna bounce off of that a little bit. Not the gnome harvest. I'm gonna do a little weird thing here because we haven't talked about orcs, right?
Avoid the harvest.
Well, because we talked briefly about racism, right?
Awful.
Of all the races, what's that?
This is awful. I can already feel it.
But here's where I'm going with this. Of all, so we've touched on cannibalism. It's been a running theme. But of all the races in Faerun, which is one of the ones that is the most reviled? I was going to say the goblins or the orcs, right?
Right.
So what would be the easiest sell to the common folk of Faerun who are starving and are looking for sustenance and are having to turn to the most horrible style of sustenance?
They're
right?
gonna eat the goblins.
There you go. So not quite gnomes, but no one's going to cry if you eat over the death of a couple of goblins. So that's where I'm going.
Okay,
So
so
now-
the harvest is the cultivation of goblins for
That's where I'm going
meat
with this.
consumption.
So goblins, who are traditionally seen as a reviled, barely sentient pest species, are now being cultivated and harvested for sustenance.
Are they
Goblins
like-
are cattle.
Would they
Yes.
keep them in really small cages?
Oh, I
to
would say so.
give them
Like-
weird like
Think
Goblin
farm,
veal.
watermelon
chicken farm, but with goblins. Yeah,
Like
basically
cute
correct.
watermelons.
where
Uh-huh. That's the thing. That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm shooting for.
Gross.
Yeah,
Okay.
how are they being stored in tiny cages?
In tiny cages.
They're being
Now, of course, it's only been a
cubed.
couple of years, so this is like we haven't progressed the timeline yet. So right now, this is I'm going to say
You don't have
it's less
factory
to
goblin
do-
farming yet.
They're not the factory level
Yeah,
yet. I'm going to say
parts on
that there is a constant there's a cottage industry of adventurers. Hang on, let me finish. There's a cottage industry of fiefdoms hiring adventuring parties to go out and corral goblins out in their little enclaves,
Goblin
to
wrangling.
bring them back to be
Boys for goblins.
giving them little cattle prods.
That's it. That's what I'm doing here. I'm doing it.
Goblins, throw them on the back of the horse.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly what I was envisioning.
God. Okay, adventurers are being hired to round up goblins and herd them into places to be raised like
As
livestock.
cattle. Yep.
Why would you
Okay.
not just overpower the goblins
Yay.
and keep them in their own place where they already were? That saves you on so much transportation cost.
No,
And
because
they
live
breed
in-
really well, so I mean...
Exactly, right? I'm not
Oh,
wrong. I'm not wrong.
What have we done?
Clean them up a little bit. Give them fatten them up on a diet of whatever non-toxic shit exists. And look at that. That's good eating right there.
So do we find out that goblins can actually eat the ash and like
Oh, yeah, there you go. Even better.
Oh, God. There we go. Goblins can eat the ash.
There you go.
So they're a reliable source
they're not
of
only cleaning the
protein.
world,
I mean, ash does have nutrients in it. It's full of what? Nitrates, I believe. Is that right? Someone can
Oh,
correct me on
Yeah,
that.
there's all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
All sorts of shit is in that. Okay, that's great. Great answer.
You said that so mournfully. I don't believe you.
He's just sad that it was a great answer.
I am sad.
I hate that I love that answer.
That's so good.
I don't like how much I like that. Yeah.
Like, there has been this because usually goblins eat people, and now
Yeah.
people eat goblins.
Of course. Fair. Hey, how the turns have tabled.
In Soviet Faerun, you eat goblin.
There you go.
All right, Tim.
Yeah.
You have a 7. This is our
think
first
it's
7.
seven.
would shatter like chicken bones, or would they be stronger?
I'd
Like,
imagine so.
Give us something beautiful here,
Yeah.
Tim.
What is the most beautiful thing in or about our place?
You know what? This is a good thing. I think it does need something like Our world's a pretty crap sack world, so come on, Tim, help us out here.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things.
I just have to say, like, I'm now imagining like the Simpsons whacking day, but for goblins.
just releasing them all when everybody goes clubbing.
It's a delightful bit of flavor that we've added to our world here. I like these. I like these ones that like really like take us in left field, right? So
yeah. Oh, and for what it's worth, I will say I'm imagining that it's like the Drow, because the Drow are used to doing this sort of depraved shit, and they take some pleasure from forcing the surface dwellers to do this thing. But as it turns out, the surface dwellers are like, huh, Goblin kind of tastes like chicken, right?
yeah. Like,
and the Drow
why weren't we
like,
doing this before?
What a great idea! All right, what's beautiful about this world, Tim, if anything?
The taste of goblin soup.
yeah, exactly.
One lettuce and tomato sandwich with a goblin is nice and lean.
It's a GLT. It's a GLT is what they call it.
It's so perky. I love it.
Goblin lettuce tomato. Fuck.
For days.
Fuck. I'm having a hard time with this one.
You can also say, I'm going to pass this. There is nothing beautiful, and you can use one of your 6 actions instead.
The only one who's done that so far.
No, we're gonna go real niche. One of the things that people are also doing with Obsidian is that they're hanging like sun catchers on their porches, and the reflectiveness of the Obsidian is kind of like it sends the light out in really interesting and wild ways. And the amount of these things hanging about is directly proportional to like Drow influence.
So I wonder. I don't know how easy it would be for potentially any of them to do, but realistically, based on the structure of molecules within the obsidian glass, if you can slice it thin enough, you could reasonably see through it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm thinking kind of like almost like wind chimes, but they're like sun chimes. You know what I mean? So like
that's great.
They're catching light and
instead of catching and using wind to make sound, it's like catching the light to produce maybe more light, like light amplifiers.
And it's using something dark to kind of like scatter this light that like the Drow maybe aren't used to, and it's beautiful in a weird, strange sort of way.
Look at you, man. That kicks ass. That's an awesome thing.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. Might they also be like, so there's the god of the sun whose name is currently escaping me. Lavender. Lathander. There we go. Lathander is the god of the sun.
That's right.
And then we've also talked about Elistray, who was the Drow, the only good member of the Drow pantheon.
Right,
She was a goddess of the moon and beauty. Could we maybe say also that these might also be either holy symbols or symbols of, adherence to the old gods of beauty and light, and maybe now this new goddess who suddenly people realize, hey, maybe not all is bad about the Drow.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. That this is sort of like, more to do with the goddess of the moon and like, just that sort of a thing. Like the more adherents there are to her, which is going to be like really concentrated in Luskan and Everwinter.
And if you have strong faith in the old gods, maybe they shine a little more brightly for you. And when you have that faith in them, when the Drow are around, they really lighten even more.
Cool.
That's cool. I like that idea. Great answer.
Thanks.
Not what I would have expected. Toast. You've got our second 8.
Yeah, it's my second 8 too.
Nice.
The news is dramatic and tensions are high. What is the news? How is this reaction physicalized in space? I think we've already talked about this a lot.
It's the taste sensation that's sweeping the nation.
No, but I mean, like the news would always be all over the place about either more ecological disasters going on in the wake of what's happened, or new areas where the drow are taking hold and subjugating people, or news about resistances trying to pop up and being beaten down, or about certain new goblin collection groups, new goblin mercenary
Goblin
groups.
procurement
Yeah.
teams.
Yes. Are becoming more of a thing. And that would just, I mean, I don't know, that just makes it super chaotic, because I'm assuming most people would kind of feel like, oh, what's going to happen to us? When is this going to attack us? And I mean, realistically, it follows logically based on what we've talked about before. People are going to try moving south, get out of cities where they think it's too dangerous, try and either set themselves up in small tribal areas off the grid, or try to like hunker down with groups of neighbors and try and support each other. Or they end up getting subjugated and forced to whack goblins, get more. Um, yeah, that's
But I
all
add something to that.
of course.
Another way that this might be physicalized is I would imagine like maybe now there's like almost like a new cast of not a cast, but like a new career or a new calling is like the news bearer. Like the guy who is going to take it upon himself to travel from town to town telling everybody, like, my whole job is to come and tell you what's going on. You give me some food, give me some water, help me get to the next place.
Yeah, but I think it's more likely that news is going to end up coming down through refugee populations.
Okay.
I don't know if there's going to, if that kind of profession would find success, because to be honest and to be realistic about it, people wouldn't really want to hear stuff like that, right? It's a little bit easier to hear from people who are like actively trying to get out of it
Yeah.
and trying to set themselves up into a better life, versus somebody who's just
Yeah.
coming and trying to be like, well, feed me and I'll tell you all about how terrible it is up north. Like, probably, like, no, fuck off.
Well, I mean
Like,
that's a bit of an exaggeration. What I'm thinking about is I'm trying to evoke like the pirate radio sort of ideas that you get in a lot of places that are really heavily war torn. That there are these people that, you know, I move and I broadcast, and it's my job, my calling is to broadcast and tell you the truth about what's happening here. That's kind of what I was thinking about. But I also like this idea that the news is just traveling through the refugees as people are moving and trying to keep themselves alive and doing what they have to do. They carry that news with them, and it spreads sort of organically in that case instead of being
to that to the other
forcefully spread.
you'd end up probably with a lot of very interesting art from the places that are subjugated, as it evolves through the situations, as life in the towns changes and everything like that. The art's going to reflect, um, yeah, those changes in structure or whatnot, and proliferation of that could help spread the news. I don't know. I mean, I think it'd just be too chaotic to be able to internalize it a lot. But anyway,
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. Cool. All right. Here we go. This will be our first 10. Okay, so on a 10, something a little bit different happens. Now, I may pick freely, since I'm the one who drew the card. Pick freely between the following questions, but do not pick the same question twice. And those questions are either the gardens are planted, gardens in quote. The work has been done and now we wait. What was planted and what are we waiting for? Or there was a great victory that enables the inhabitants of our place to build towards a new future. What's the future they wish for? How will they set to work on it? There is a great loss, one that sets new burdens on the inhabitants of our place. How do they cope and what have they lost forever? Someone important in our place dies. It is a resting day in anticipation of problems, or it is a resting day in the knowledge of a secure future. I am going to pick there is a great loss. So one of the things that we've been talking about is how you can't see the moon anymore, right? You can't see the stars and all of this. And Elistray is a goddess of the moon. Saloon, I think, is another Faerunian goddess of the moon. I'm going to say the great loss is the death of Elistray. No,
Well, Lolth finally got her.
Yeah, we're gonna say the death of Elistray as the Drow have gained more power, having come to the surface and expanded their belief and just gained more control. Both has become more powerful. Finally had enough of this upstart who's refusing to toe the line, and she goes to direct battle with Elistray and kills Elistray. And as a consequence, in the death of Elistray, the moon is gone. There is no moon anymore.
Damn.
Because the moon, as again, some of us are leading into the idea that there is this cosmology that is, sort of real. You can't move stars and stuff like that. Toast. I am going to be much more figurative with it and say, well, the moon is just there because of the goddess who makes the moon. Yeah. And if she is gone, the moon is gone. There is no more moon. It is obviously a devastating loss in terms of tides and stuff like this. Actually, no, I'm going to say the tides are still there. It's just the moon is gone. Everything else functions. It's just the moon is there. The light of the moon, its presence, its reassurance is gone.
Any way we could marry the two of these? I was listening to like an interesting talk about what would happen. It was actually a Kurskasokt video where they were talking about what would happen if the moon slammed into the earth, and one of them was like once it reaches like a certain Lagrange point, or there's a once the gravitational tidal forces actually start ripping the moon apart, and it would give Earth a set of rings. Like,
Yep.
You lose the moon, but you gain rings instead. Some cataclysmic.
That's okay. It's like maybe Elish, because one of the things in D&D is that gods don't really die. Right?
No,
like they persist in other ways, and they can be brought back through faith and things that happen in all of this.
Right.
So it's not that the moon is gone.
It's just been shattered and torn asunder.
Is shattered. With her death, the moon is shattered. And that makes sense because there is also Saloon, who is the surface goddess of the moon. She wouldn't be destroyed by this, but she will be fundamentally changed as the moon is replaced by rings.
There's more cataclysm than just what's happening on the surface of Faerun here, and this is
So I imagine these rings are like because this is still early, right? So this would not be like the nice accretion sort of disc that you get from a.
No, it would just be
more like just a mess of rocks. Essentially.
Yeah, it's like the sky at night when you can see through the clouds. Then the sky truly seems to glitter, not just from like the twinkling of stars. Like literally, it's like there's glitter in the sky, and it shines and just is constantly shifting and phasing about. Well, that's my answer.
Cool.
Now that we've answered that question, we will roll a die. And we will move in time. So let me roll a die for us. We've rolled a 1. We were operating in terms of centuries. So we now are going to advance our timeline by 100 years.
Nice.
Cool.
So after we have answered the question, we've rolled the die, we move 100 years forward in time, and we collectively decide as a group. Does our civilization still exist here? Do the characters that we've identified here still live here? If not, who lives here now? Does anyone? Obviously, the civilization persists, but...
Yeah.
Well, let's start with Weimer. I think Weimer's our central figure here. We haven't named a whole lot of characters.
Nope.
But Weimer as a Warforged can live for centuries, right?
Yeah,
so
they have not found an upper limit to their mortality as far as age goes. So
there you go. So we can assume he's still around.
Yeah, unless we decide that he was killed by something, but
that hasn't happened.
That hasn't happened. Correct.
Not yet. So Kartan.
Well, how long do Dragonborn live?
Probably a couple 100 years.
Do they? I can look it up, but I don't know for a fact.
Well, dragons have lifespans of at least a couple centuries.
They live to be around 80.
80, yeah. They're human-like. They're not dragons as far as age goes.
So
So
Kartan is dead.
So Kartan is
He-
probably now dead. So now the question is, what remains of his legacy?
What were they able to accomplish?
How did he
Kartan and
die?
Weimer. Yeah.
Did he just die of old age, or did he die in a glorious
Did he die in
battle? Did he
revolution?
martyr?
Is he a martyr? Maybe he's a martyr.
Could be.
Yeah.
That would be appropriate for him, wanting to
I think that works.
redeem himself.
So Weimer would be like the symbol of the revolution, but Kartan dies as a martyr after having overcome the prejudice of him being a former disciple of Tiamat, was able to rally a resistance movement to some degree of success. How much success do you guys think? With Weimer at his side.
I would say enough that. So I don't want to just yet give the Drow the boot from Everwinter.
Right.
But I like the idea, almost like East and West Berlin.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay. So he's
Kartan became a hero because he and Weimer helped to establish a Drow-free section of Everwinter. And the people who live in that Drow-free section, they live in, we're always kind of unsure if this is going to be the day where things really kick off again. But for the moment, there's a tentative peace between that side of the wall and the Drow side of the wall, where things are as bad as always, if not worse.
Sure. Do we want to name the Kartan and Weimer's side of town? Is Weimer still there? Has Weimer stuck around? Or has he moved on to someplace else?
I would figure that this is still a fairly central part of like the conflict as far as the old and new. It's about as far south as the Drow have been able to take, presumably, in this world.
So we've basically Weimer and Kartan have stalled the Drow advance, and while the Drow are still being Drow, they're probably frustrated by this, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so, like, what do we call this detente? Is this like a ceasefire situation that we're dealing with here?
Is détente might be the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah, a détente.
Yeah. So, like, North and South
easing
Korea,
of hostility or strained relations, especially between countries. A serious effort at détente with the Eastern Bloc.
So, what do we call? Let's call it like Southern Everwinter, or do we want to think of a new name for it?
Maybe they've taken up the historical
name
of
the
Neverwinter.
Old name back.
Yeah, Neverwinter.
So it's
Everwinter and Neverwinter.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
The two halves.
There you go. So let's call it Neverwinter then. So or New Neverwinter, or no, that's dumb because it's already.
I like just sticking with Neverwinter.
New
like Neverwinter. The Drow took that name because they're saying this is ours now, and we're going
Never
to
ever winter.
and they're saying no, we're bringing it back. We oppose.
We're bringing it back. Yeah, I'm taking it back.
I defy you. This is never winter.
Yeah.
Right again.
What's that? Was that Toast?
What? Never
What'd
mind.
you say?
Never mind.
Done.
No.
So now what?
So so the civilization is still kind of going. We haven't thought about what's happening outside of Everwinter and Neverwinter.
It's been our focus,
I would imagine that in 100 years, Toast had brought up, all of these movements and people trying to constantly sort of move and stay away from the bad things. And I would imagine that paired to what I was saying about these little verdant pockets of life that kind of exist in the Ashlands, that there have been a few fairly stable locations that have emerged from this. Places that are relatively safe. They have used the ash to build ash brick walls and obsidian to create fortifications and protect those spaces, and little pockets of civilization just struggling to have that ember of life come up.
Now I will just point out we've been recording for an hour and 50 minutes. So how long do we want to go for tonight, and what's an easy way for us to?
We could probably just finish this answer out, and then I'd be happy to stop at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a decent breaking point. Is there a way for us to keep this deck alive, persisting? At least for a day, because if we are going to come back and record tomorrow, we can continue. Can we leave a tab open?
Yeah, I can leave it open.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're coming back tomorrow, that's not a big deal. My other suggestion was going to be, if that's not viable, is can you do what you did for us last time, Muffin, and pre-deal the cards for everyone?
Could. I'm also keeping a tab in my Excel sheet to keep track of, we've drawn 3 aces now, for example, and 1, 2, and 2 threes.
Yeah, that's
so we can just do this again, if we play through.
Yeah,
or if you just get an
matter.
actual physical deck of cards, you can pull out the ones that you've already done. And
or I can just keep the tab open.
Keep the tab open. Let's just keep the tab open.
If we're
Nice and
reconvening,
simple.
Yeah.
That way, if there's a power outage, we have a backup.
Yep.
Wait, guys, no. Perfect idea for it.
Okay.
Just keep the tab.
Oh, keep the tab open. Why didn't I think of that?
I think of that?
See, and that's why he's our toasted host with the most. This guy brings the fucking big brain ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Left, right, and center.
There's something that we never talked about that we brought up at one point, was that with the water from the ocean being pulled into what was the Betrayer's Maw and all of this, we that the Moonshay Isles, suddenly there was more ground, and the Moonshay Isles might become the Moonshay Isle singular.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And it was originally, just little pockets of space, maybe some pirates, things like this, but mostly, very rural sorts of places. I'm imagining that in 100 years, that space is kind of becoming like, because it's separated from the mainland too, like it's sort of becoming like the last bastion of original hope. Like people talk about it, in taverns and stuff in whispered tones to make sure the drow that don't hear them. It's like, I've heard that there's a place out west, the Moonshay Isles, where they live like we used to live.
Well, the drow
It makes
people, so it's not like they're really going to get over there.
exactly. Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Like, what do the drow know about seafaring? Like, jack shit. Yeah.
Like they're going to probably want to establish ports, because ports are important, obviously, for communication and trade and commerce and whatnot. So I feel like if the Maw has extended around Neverwinter, and actually has the ability to turn that city into a port right on like the gigantic pool, that's going to drastically change how trade works within.
Well, the question about that though is because the Maw has taken a chunk out of the northern part of Toril, so what's really on the other side of the Maw is like undiscovered country, because the rest of Toril hasn't really been developed. We don't really know what's over there.
Yeah. So that actually leads nicely into the second question for this collective answer for our part is, what does the place physically look like now? Has anything visually changed? How does it smell now? How does it feel here? So I think an immediate answer is that, people have gotten much more used to the ash falls. The ash falls are still here. That's just sort of become an ever-present part of this world now.
Okay.
People have gotten used to it. The houses are built in the style that Toast had talked about. You may find some old pockets of wooden buildings here and there, but they're definitely the slums now. People, for the most part, build with ash bricks and ash mortar
and
with
obsidian
stone. And the drow have, they're used to living underground and working with stone all the time. They built their homes from stalactites and stalagmites and things like this. So I would say, like, now the cities that have been taken by the drow have really begun to look drowish as they've built that obsidian up and used it to create their representation. So there are places like in Everwinter that you walk through that don't even feel like a surface city anymore. Like it feels like I'm underground when I'm here, and the walls look it, and it's dark like it is, and the only way I can see is by torchlight.
Yeah,
makes sense.
And then the deliverances likely have been more formalized. They're probably less out of like shattered remnants of stone and actually built up into larger altars. Still probably using like you'd said, Muffin, the idea that like old statues have been defaced to represent the Drow a little bit more closely and like their gods and their beliefs.
But that might almost be starting to become that might start having a sense of consistency after a century.
After a century, like those things are now like kind of how they all like getting to the point where the generations are seeing them as like, okay, that's just how they've always looked.
They have certain forms and ways of building them now to reflect that, to match.
Yeah, they're not painting on gaunt faces on things. They're actually formed that way on the new.
So since we said that some of these are like, say, former statues of certain deities and important religious figures and things, there's also like the idea that maybe people now think that's actually all of our deities. There are people who were so raised around that like all of our deities are Drow.
Ooh.
Like we never, of course they were. How would this have ever happened if they weren't Drow? They would have like, clearly
100 years
they must themselves be Drow, but they're not all bad. I mean, Elistray died for us, she died for us, and she left this sign in the heavens, so clearly not all Drow are evil, so these are not evil. So
have a softening a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably not completely,
It's
because like if there is
Drow sympathizers.
Yeah. And if there is a fairly strong distinction between North and South, then there is still going to be like an understanding and a remembrance of the old gods in their old forms, but it's going to start blurring right after the.
Well, I was going to ask about that. So, because originally we had established that due to the chaos of the situation, that there was fractionalization, right? There was fiefdoms being created, divides created,
really narrow.
So in 100 years, the question is, do those get softened or do those get hardened? Like, what's racism look like 100 years later? Now, remember, in the Forgotten Realms, racism is a lifetime for some races, but not for others. The Drow and the Elves are long-lived. Most of the ones that were there when the Maw appeared are still alive. So, including Weimer, right? So that's the thing we have to consider here. We're not talking about 100 human years here. 100 years is not a lifetime for some of these people.
Yeah, it's going to be more for like the norm, like the former like top dwelling races that are going to be starting to lose sight of things, but the Drow probably still have a really keen idea of.
That's my thinking.
Of how they were treated before, pre-cataclysm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's still very acute for them, whereas everyone else is like, oh, maybe things haven't always been so bad.
Like, I agree with you, Tim. That there's going to be some of that for sure. I just don't know that it would go so far as to wholesale acceptance of all deities or Drow now. I just think that's a little bit much to swallow.
No,
I
think there are just some people that are starting to feel that way, and there are some
maybe that's
fine. Who are like,
it's a single century, so I think that's reasonable.
And remember what Toast was saying about refugees moving around and these and let's put all these things together, the xenophobia, refugee movements, the cannibalism stuff we talked about, the goblin hoarding, all of these things. I would imagine that there are a lot of places that are now very like, this city is all one, or township or whatever, this commune is all one race.
In 100 years, there's enough time for a new subspecies of goblin to have been bred into existence, like how we breed dogs. A domestic fat goblin is now a thing.
The domesticated goblins are now a thing, are beginning to become a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but who's smart enough and would have access to enough goblins to do that? Because I would think that around Neverwinter, they would farm them all and have ripped through a large percentage of the population in 100 years.
They farm them. They've been raising and crossbreeding them and farming them like we farm chickens.
There's a more docile breed of goblin that I've born today.
These ones only sometimes.
When we started, they were going out and hunting them and corralling them and bringing them in. But since then, it's now been 100 years, and goblins are short-lived and breed fast. They've hybridized them and created a new subspecies.
I don't think that would have worked really well within the city or within the bounds, especially based on the city I think we've been describing. I think that innovation is going to need to come from somewhere else and be brought into the city.
So the surrounding communities or
of some sort. I don't know. Maybe it comes from further away.
Well, we can maybe find out. we can maybe find out in the next cards that we draw.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So let's go to the last question on this then. Does the place still use the same name? If not, what is it called now and who calls it that? So we originally decided that, or I had used one of my answers anyway to say that people now refer to this place as the Ashlands.
Oh yeah.
And we've decided, on Everwinter and Neverwinter as
That's
that section of Everwinter that has been taken back by the people.
we
The
agree that it
Weimar
was the
Republic.
Southern-
Hey, the Weimar Republic.
No.
No,
no.
that's terrible. Oh.
So, I
One
mean,
line, two
it's with 100 years. I mean, I can't imagine, that people would call it anything too terribly different. Like that's
Yeah, I'd agree
the
with that.
Ashlands.
I don't think it would be significantly different that way. But with the new, like you say, the new resistance taking part of Everwinter, that would be returned to Neverwinter, like we were talking about.
That's a good.
That's
a
probably
good
the only
idea.
significant name change in the area.
Yeah. Cool.
Very
Then
cool.
That is, as you said, I think that's a good place for us to stop. That's the end of our first long, and that was a lot of cards that we actually drew.
Yeah,
before
I feel like we got through a
drawing.
fairly significant portion of the deck, certainly more than a quarter.
Yeah,
of
we
it.
got
Did we
through
get two of
almost
everything?
we got through almost half of the deck.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, did we get 2 of everything almost? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
We
be
drew
doing a
16
lot more of
cards,
the
and
10
there are only
events.
40 cards to draw in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to get through a lot more of the 10 events, which are going to take a fair amount of time, but I think we could easily finish this up.
But once we draw the 4th 10, even if there are more cards to draw, the game is over.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. So we don't have to go through all. We may not go
we
through.
won't draw
likely
all
won't go
40
through
cards
all the
unless the very last card is the last 10, which is
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff, guys.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting way to just explore a just like a really niche thing. Like you don't have to go through like a months long campaign of it, but yeah, you could really just like flesh something out here. So that's pretty cool.
And it takes a lot of the stress off of a DM.
True.
Because like I like creating my own worlds and stuff, but for simplicity's sake, I'll usually run like modified versions of existing
course.
campaigns,
Yeah, that's
and
typical.
modules and stuff. And this would give me as a DM the capacity to let the players help create it, and then the players then don't have to feel like I don't know who the gods are, I don't know the history of this world, I haven't read the source books, and it's like, no, you've made the world, you're invested in this space now.
Completely.
So I see why this is so popular. If I run another actual tabletop game like in real life, I will start it by doing this probably. This is really cool.
Agreed. Easy way to get good buy-in. So cool.
For sure. Agreed.
Well,
All right,
thanks for watching,
I'll leave this
everybody,
open.
And
Yeah. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. There will be links to both the PDF, and I'll have a map of the Sword Coast so people can like follow along. I'll throw that in both of the videos. But yeah, otherwise, have a good week, and you three, I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh yeah, we're doing this
Sounds
again.
fun. Yeah, we're gonna probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
All right.
bye.
Fuck you.
Bye.